Welcome to the Lifestyle Medicine Clinical Elective Rotation. My short explanation of lifestyle medicine is that it optimizes modifiable risk factors to prevent, arrest, and reverse chronic lifestyle-related diseases. Here are the objectives of the course. In essence, I want you to learn about lifestyle medicine so that you can apply it to yourself, your family and friends, and patients in an effective way. The goal of the course is to accumulate an average of 35 hours of activities per week. The details of those activities are found in the guidelines for the clinical rotations. Pay special attention to the sections in gray, which are what we're going to go over in this orientation. All of the activities must be related to one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine: a plant-predominant diet, physical activity, stress management, control of unhealthy substances, restorative sleep, or positive social connections. There are several required activities for this rotation. The first is this video, focusing on the items highlighted in gray in the guidelines. There's a final report that you'll turn in, which in essence is a log of the activities that you do. There's a Teams orientation meeting, generally the first Monday of the rotation at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and a weekly review at 11 o'clock on Fridays that can last from 1 to 2 hours, depending on how many students are involved. There's also a written weekly reflection that's due by the following Monday. And specific activities that are highlighted in blue in your guidelines are recommended to be done during the first week. Here's what the end of the rotation report looks like. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You'll list the date of the activity and the hours you spend on the activity. Several similar activities can be lumped together. For example, if you watch 3 nutrition facts videos on type 2 diabetes, you can lump them together. Individual journal articles, however, should be listed individually. Highlight the personal applications activities in yellow so they stand out for me. I'll explain those in a few minutes. During the weekly review meeting, all the students in the rotation will share a highlight that they've learned for the week. Then we'll ask for discussion, comments, or questions. The students finishing the rotation that week will share how their life will be different from having participated in the rotation. The time spent watching this video in these meetings and writing the reflection and report can be logged as activity hours toward the 35 hours per week. The weekly review is required unless you have other school-related activities at the same time. If you have a residency interview, you have to register this in Salesforce. If you can't make the meeting for any other reason, you'll need to burn some of your PTO time and get that approved by your APA. Your weekly written reflection looks like this. In the top section, we ask that you copy and paste your week's list from your activity report so that I can see what you're writing about down below. Your personal application activities need to be listed individually as the example shows, including citations, demonstrating the clinical evidence for that specific activity. If you're doing a plant-based recipe, you need to list the link to the recipe or include an image of the recipe from the recipe book, as well as a picture of the finished product. The next section is for you to reflect on what you've learned this week. Include at least one highlight from each of your learning activities. If you can't make the weekly discussion, be sure to go into more detail here. You're welcome to go in as much detail as you like. Some students have used this to take their notes for the rotation. I also ask for some critical feedback. I read all these and make changes almost weekly to the guidelines based on the feedback from the students. Learning activities can be divided into 2 types: academic learning activities and personal application activities. Options for academic learning activities are extensively listed in the guidelines. The activities that are required are highlighted in blue, activities that are recommended in the first week are listed in yellow, and activities specifically recommended by your classmates are in green highlights. First among the required activities highlighted is the American College of Lifestyle Medicine Essentials course. There are several other key articles and resources that we would like you to complete during the first week. When you go to the course, you'll be asked to purchase it. Use the code WHC22 at checkout and it will cost you nothing. The course is designed to take about 5.5 hours. It's recommended that you finish this during your first week. Some students do one module and then spend some time looking at related materials, then come back to the next. I wouldn't expect you to log more than 7 or 8 hours total to complete the Essentials course. If you spend time in other references related to the modules, we ask that you list each of those separately in your log with the hours you spend on those. The rest of the activities are up to you. You're free to use sources outside of the list as long as they relate directly to one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. These academic learning activities can be podcasts, YouTube videos, online modules, journal articles, and even book reviews. There's a list of books in the guidelines that you can utilize for your book review. These are books generally written for the lay public, but have citations listed either in the book itself or on a website. If you do a book review, it can be no more than 20% of your total hours, and you should submit the notes from your review. If you spend time on other reference materials mentioned in the book, list those in addition, and you can take credit for the time you spend on those as well. The idea of the course is to introduce you to some new material and then allow you to follow your curiosity. Now, about the personal application learning activities. You're given credit for an average of an hour a day or 7 hours per week to apply what you're learning. The underlying principles are that these things must be evidence-based and something new to you. For example, if you normally run every day, you can't use running as a personal application activity. If you decide to try Tai Chi, you'll need to cite a scientific reference on how this benefits your health in your weekly reflection. The personal application learning activities need to be related to one of the 3 pillars. They can be making a plant-based recipe, which does need to be 100% plant-based to get the credit, an evidence-based physical activity, or an evidence-based stress management technique. The total hours for personal application learning activities can be up to an average of 7 hours per week. You are certainly encouraged to do more than an hour a day, but we're going to give you credit for an hour a day to get you started. Any specific activity can take up to 2 hours per event. So for example, if you're cooking bean soup and it's on the stove for 4 hours, you can only take 2 hours credit for that. Any specific activity can only be logged up to 3 times a week. So for example, if you do meditation, you can do it up to 3 times a week, and then the other activities for that week need to be something else. I wish we didn't have to include this list, but it has evolved during our first experience with the course as students have sometimes stretched the limits of what we intended. The activity can't be something you would normally do anyway if you were not on this rotation or if on another virtual rotation. You can't take credit for other extracurricular activities you're involved in, such as RUSP, research, or tutoring. Your reported recipes cannot have any animal products in them. Eating at a restaurant or eating food prepared for you by someone else, such as your mother, can't be credited. Watching or attending sporting events doesn't count. Leisure activities like reading, playing, walking, or going to the theater don't count. Yard work like raking leaves or shoveling snow doesn't count. Volunteering doesn't count unless it's directly related to this rotation. For example, one student taught plant-based recipes at a local food bank. She was allowed to take credit for that. Attending religious activities or services or praying can't be logged. Time driving to and from a residency interview can't be logged unless you're listening to a podcast while you're driving. You can't turn on a sleep app and take credit for sleeping or napping. And you can't take credit for fasting. Other activities that you do get credit for are days that hospitals usually consider holidays for their surgery departments. You can take 7 hours credit for each of those. Required school activities such as OMM lab can be reported. Residency interviews also can be reported, however, you can only claim the face-to-face time. So if you're in an interview online for 2 hours, you can claim 2 hours. If you're invited in person to be there and they give you a tour, a meal, and an interview, you can claim up to 7 hours for the actual time in person you are with them. So where do you begin? Begin with the activities highlighted in blue and in yellow. I would encourage you to consider your classmates' recommendations in green as well. In the blue highlights are my thoughts on the diet wars, the ACLM Essentials course, Plant-Wise, a documentary, takes about an hour to watch, and it features people at various stages of their life who decide to adopt a plant-based diet. They may not have arrived by the end of the documentary, but they're well on their way. There are also some foundational articles to read. Nutrition Facts is Dr. Greger's summary of specific research articles. Usually the videos are 7 to 10 minutes long. He has a searchable database that's very helpful, and he also includes the actual links to the articles in the citation section. My story is my story of my health transformation. Know Your 4 for More is a tool based on the EPIC study to help patients learn what an initial healthy level of exercise and diet is. It's useful for you guys to begin to share with your patients as well. I also recommend that you do a Google search about lifestyle medicine and your area of specialty interest or other interests that you may have. AI pulls out some good sources that you might want to look at. If you're doing more than a week of the rotation, there's also a list of other resources I suggest you look at early on so that you know what's available to choose from before you get to your last week. So the rest are up to you from the list or from somewhere else as long as they relate to the pillars. The contents at the beginning of the guidelines are hot linked and are there to help you find things that may be of particular interest to you. Any of the initial sources are heavily weighted toward diet, since that's the most important and most useful tool that we have in lifestyle medicine. However, all the other 6 pillars are important as well, so you may want to look at those. There are 2 appendices as well that you may want to look at. Appendix 1 was created by one of your classmates who's going into OB-GYN. She found that some of Dr. Greger's references were outdated, and she made some notes on these. The second appendix is a growing list of things recommended by your classmates to add to the guidelines. I parked them in the appendix for now until I have a chance to review those and see where they belong. So again, in summary, the deliverables for the course to be submitted by the following Monday are your weekly reflection and your end of rotation report documenting an average of 35 hours per week. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or bring them up at one of our meetings together.